He's not trusted and he's not liked by Israelis. And if civilians keep dying every single day for an indefinite period, because Netanyahu has not in any way expressed what the end game is here,
Right.
and if he can't deliver, he could find himself disappointed by the reaction.
The images coming out of Israel right now of collapsed apartment blocks, rising civilian casualties are the kind of scene Israel usually inflict on other countries. But now the role have reversed. It has met an adversary that actually fights back. Now Israelis are the one hiding in tunnels, something that they never expected. They assume by now, which is the third day of this war, that the Trump administration will step in by now, especially as Iran rains down ballistic missiles in Tel Aviv. The illusions many Israelis live under that their layered missile defense system would make them untouchable has been shattered. Israeli citizens are starting to feel real pressure. And even Netanyahu, who once branded himself as a fearless leader, is reportedly in Cyprus. So he's not even in Israel right now. That's not exactly what you expect from someone who calls himself a lion. Is this the new reality for Israel? Let's hear from an Israeli analyst or an Israeli journalist on what the public sentiment is right now.
I personally am quite tired after 3 nights of very little sleep. The senior, I was able to get out a bit today, and there's some cafes open, but just for takeout. There are 1 or 2 cafes open more normally, but for briefer hours. But basically, other than, those of us who insist on just being able to sit down and have a coffee on a sidewalk somewhere, it's very, very quiet. And Israel has been again completely isolated from the world. There are no flights in, no flights out. Schools have been shut down. The assumption is that school will not resume before the beginning of next school year. People are not going to work. It's a very extreme deviation from what was already a fairly difficult war routine, but had become a routine.
So, as we know now, Israel has now escalated their attack by directly targeting Iranian infrastructure. Remember when they initiated this war, their number one goal was to cripple the Iranian nuclear capability, which has obviously failed now. So they are moving to another priority, which is targeting Iranian oil fields, which report shows that that's what Israelis are targeting right now. So when this journalist was asked how Israelis feels about their cities burning and how this affects Netanyahu's popularity, here's what she responded.
And the first response is, I don't know. There haven't been any polls in the, 50 or so hours since this started. It was a weekend and it was unexpected. Netanyahu, as you know, is a very unpopular prime minister. And I have no question at all that one of his hopes for this operation is that it would burnish again his ruined credentials as Israel's Mr. Security. After, the disaster of October 7th. It was interesting for me to see him walking through Bat Yam, relatively unwealthy kind of satellite city adjacent to Tel Aviv. There were, I don't know about crowds, there were a few dozen people around him, and they were, chanting, Bibi, King of Israel. It's a Netanyahu stronghold there. I have to tell you that in Jerusalem, which is another Netanyahu stronghold, I went to the grocery store to just stock up a little bit. And there was a gentleman in the line for the cashier next to me who made a comment. He said, oh, thank God we have Bibi looking out for us. I don't know how representative this is. I can only share with you my sense. My sense is that Israelis are exhausted. worn out, and that Netanyahu has again made a promise he won't be able to keep, right? Unless a wager he seems to have made comes out, which we can discuss in a minute. Netanyahu promised Israelis a very clear thing with this Iran attack, and it is that he will eliminate the nuclear threat from Iran, full stop. For Israelis, that's a very persuasive argument, as we see that it is, by the way, for many Western leaders, for Keir Starmer, for Emmanuel Macron. If the threat of a nuclear Iran is abstract for many people, for these leaders it's not, and for Israelis it's been a presence in their lives for several decades, with Iranian leaders routinely screaming that Israel needs to be wiped off the face of the earth. So I expect that at that level, Israelis support this. I think that the UN nuclear watchdog report that happened to come out on Thursday, just before this strike, also helped Israelis understand the danger, the real danger Iran poses. That said, Iran until this point was not disrupting daily life in Israel. And now you're seeing civilians die every single day. And at the same time, soldiers are still dying in Gaza. It's just Israelis get to pay less attention to it because the Iran war is so now blanketing the news sphere here. So my best guess, my honest assessment for you, is that Netanyahu does not have a huge margin of action here in terms of his popularity among Israelis. He's not trusted and he's not liked by Israelis. And if civilians keep dying every single day for an indefinite period, because Netanyahu has not in any way expressed what the end game is here.
Right.
And if he can't deliver, he could find himself disappointed by the reaction.
So when she was asked whether Israelis feel abandoned by the Western allies, because what Netanyahu thought was that by now Trump would be sending in the destroyers, which they have, but they requested more support from the Western allies, and they're putting a lot of pressure on the Trump administration and other European allies as well. Here's what she said about that.
I don't think there's a feeling of the international community abandoning Israel in this respect, because the statements, as you just said, have been quite nuanced. There are calls for de-escalation, but they all express support for the genuine danger posed by nuclear Iran. And I do think, again, that these leaders are very well aware of what that means. I think that Israelis have felt very confused by the growing diplomatic isolation regarding Gaza. So that came before this.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to return. I think Israelis, after 20 months of war, are exhausted. And, you know, yesterday there's political satirist who I follow, who yesterday made what I consider a very non-satirical comment. And he said, this may end up being the first war in which an entire nation dies of simple exhaustion. And I think that that reflects the vibe here. But again, I think that Netanyahu is taking certain risks. We've seen him, within a matter of hours, move away from just targeting military and nuclear targets to also including national infrastructure in Iran. And I don't know if he's going to have the support of other world leaders for that, and I'm not sure that he has made those inquiries.